report, if you would, please call the roll.
Mayor Cunningham,
Here.
Vice Mayor Roman,
Here.
Commissioner Dow,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Wright.
Here.
All is present.
All right, all present and accounted for. The next item on the agenda is always on here, it's called public hearing. What I'd like to do, if my fellow commissioners would allow, is move resolution 1, which is the Eagle Scout recognition, to this portion of the meeting, and go ahead and let the Eagle Scout and their parents be recognized, and that way we don't have to hold them here through all the different reports and things, and we can move on down the agenda from there. So if there's no opposition to that, we'll go ahead and proceed with resolution 1, and then we'll come back to the treasurer's report. So, if you would, please read resolution 1.
Resolution authorizing the mayor to sign proclamation under the Eagle Scouts on the costume and Joe Hill.
Would you like to go ahead and just kind of give a synopsis of what their achievements are, and I'll come back.
Okay, yeah, Joe is here tonight, and then is Connor Thad here? Okay, Joe, you want to come on up? So I'll present you with this. Joe dedicated his Eagle project to redoing the yellow trail at IH Park. He corrected signage, he kind of fixed some areas that were not properly authorized trail cutoffs, basically cut through people trying to cut corners. So he corrected all that, fixed some washout areas for the trail. Also installed 2 dog waste bins at the start and finish of the yellow trail, which was a tremendous help for us, much needed for the park. So we appreciate his dedication to the city and his project that he dedicated. Also, his hard work on 27 badges, correct, merit badges?
26,
26, 27. It's not an easy feat, so we appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Congratulations. I just want to say on behalf of the city of Lakeland, we certainly appreciate your commitment to this city and for the project you did, and I'm absolutely honored to be able to present you with that. So congratulations. Congratulations. Parents are just as important. All right, that being a resolution, I'll open that to be brought to the floor, even though we've already presented. I'll move that we bring that onto the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Assuming no discussion. All right, fantastic. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries unanimous. Congratulations. And if Connor's dad that was coming, or is it Joe's dad? Connor, okay. If Connor wants to come to the next meeting, I'll be happy to present that to him then, so if you just make note of that. All right, thank you so much. Thanks, commissioners, for letting us go ahead and take care of that. Let's move on to the next item, which is the treasurer's report. Kyle, you would let us.
That's up to the purview of the board. If you want him to run through that, then we're more than happy to do that. If you don't, that's fine as well. It's up to the board. Yeah, you have the report, right?
It's in here.
So is that a yes, Christine?
Can you just give us a real high level?
Sure.
You know, since going in, we just had a budget meeting, so.
Sure, I don't want to bore anybody any more than I absolutely have to. Technically, I'm supposed to tell you that there were 3 transfers that happened this year. The details for this month, rather, the month of March, the month that just ended. So the details of the transactions are in your reports. There's nothing crazy about them. They were simply, one was for education related to CMFO training that I'm going through right now. There was one for soccer-related expenditures, and since soccer is a self-funding account, Then we just had to transfer some, they had an increase in revenues, which means necessarily an increase in expenditures that accounts for that transfer. And then there was one additional transfer that was for furniture that we needed for one of our employees here. Nothing crazy about any of those, but I just wanted to let you guys know. In regards to the treasurer's report, there's the detail, of course, is listed on the sheets, but just a brief summary. We have about $10 million or so in the bank, in the general fund cash. We have approximately, as of, one second while I scroll. As of March 31st, we're projected to end the fiscal year with a positive change in fund balance of approximately $1.1 million. That's as of March 31st. We would expect that number to change in the months that follow as our expenditures increase and our revenues increase. Most of our collections for property tax have already occurred, so we wouldn't expect to see much substantial increase in our revenues. We would, however, expect to see a fairly substantial increase in our expenses as we close out the fiscal year. But those expenses have been budgeted for, and so we don't expect any adverse implications to our cash balance or to our fund balance. In regards to the sewer fund, which is our loan proprietary fund, we have approximately $2.2 million in the bank. We have approximately $10.3 million in fund balance in that particular fund. That fund balance is comprised mostly of non-spendable depreciating assets, so things like pipes and I don't even know better than I, but things that we can't spend. There's a few accounts that we are currently having negative cash flow in, which is to be expected. Those are the stormwater fund, the solid waste fund, and the stormwater solid waste, not the sewer, not the State Street 8, sorry, had a brain fart. Those three accounts we would expect to have negative cash flow, mostly because we are commingling the funds all in the general fund. So in the event that you have, say, State Street 8, for example, which has revenues that lag 2 months, we have our expenditures that we, of course, pay for monthly. When you don't account for those revenues because they lag due to collections by the state and obviously remitting those collections to the city, then you're going to see a disproportionate use of expenses or expenditures and a not underrepresented collection of revenues. So that's not necessarily cause for concern. From my investigation into the detailed line items, I don't see any accounts that have spent substantially over their budget. So I wouldn't expect that this issue would be a significant issue in the future, but we will be monitoring that going forward. But I just wanted to let you know, if you see negative accounts for, if you see positive fund balance and negative accounts, then that could give you some pause. But I just want you guys to know that that's normal for this particular period of the year. As we get closer to the end of the year, if we still see positive fund balance, when I say positive fund balance, I'm making a accounting distinction. Your fund balance is, of course, always positive, but when you account for it from an accounting perspective, it should have a negative normal balance in order to make your documents match. Does that make sense? Okay, so I didn't want to confuse anybody by saying negative fund balance. So anyways, as you progress throughout the year, you should see a negative fund balance and not a positive fund balance, and that's what we expect to have happen in the near term. I'm sure that was super confusing because you're talking about accounting distinctions. But essentially what I'm saying is that we are in, I think, sound financial shape as of right now. I don't see anything to be concerned about. I think our expenditures are in line with our budget. Our revenues are, for the most part, right on line with our projections. And as we get closer to the end of the year, end of the fiscal year, I'll be able to give you guys a clearer expectation of where we can end. But yeah, there's nothing substantial, I think, that we need to discuss or that we should be concerned about. but I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Anyone have any questions?
Just a quick comment.
Yes, sir.
It's interesting that, you know, property tax is 58% of all we have. And, it's just another example of how important commercial development is for the city.
Absolutely, I would definitely echo that. Property tax, as we all know, is our main driver of revenue right now. To the extent that we can diversify that driver of revenue, that makes everybody's job easier and gives us more resources that we can make sure that the citizens are receiving all the services that they feel are appropriate for them to receive. So development is encouraged, and Emily and Forrest are working diligently to make sure we can get some development happening as quickly as we possibly can, and I'm looking forward to making sure we use those resources appropriately.
I want to kind of sharpshoot you, I just want the public to know that the rooftop is footing the bill out for the city right now, and that's why it's so important that things get turned around real quick in our city. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right, we'll move on down to the reports from committees. Lieutenant Crowder was here last week for the work session, and she gave us a report from the sheriff's office. I have a copy if anybody would like to see that. The meeting just see me. It gives you all the statistics and everything. They're doing a good job for us, and they've increased their patrols, and so things are not as cumbersome as it could be as far as crime is concerned. So we're very grateful for them and everything they do for us. Let's move on to the city manager's report.
Yeah, I gave mine last week as well. I wasn't planning on redoing that unless you wanted to.
Fair enough. And then any report from commissioners? I know you have a Parks and Rec, for
Yes,
sure.
we had a Parks and Rec meeting on Tuesday, and our meeting was quite lengthy, but a lot of nice things going on in the Parks and Rec department. Starting with a Zadie Pool update. There is a Girl Scout troop that is interested in getting their gardening badge, and they would like to improve the flower bed around the memorial for Zadie Pool. And they are actually going to use some compost that they worked on during the winter to help fertilize those flower gardens. There was no unusual trash this month. And Plantation Hills, they are not seeing much car traffic, but at one point some kids were seen with some flashlights, and so a call was made to the sheriff's department, and they showed up very promptly. So we do have their support, and we're concerned about nefarious activities going on in our parks where they get right on that. IH Park and Clubhouse, the lamp concerts have been announced, the dates have, and 2 bands have been booked. Will Tucker is one that I might not have mentioned last month. The Parks Department has been speaking with Lakeland First Baptist. They are again committing to providing parking, additional parking, overflow parking. The Shelby County Reserve officers will be there to help direct traffic and get citizens across the street safely. Volunteer Lakeland is working on getting some kids' games and additional activities for them during those concerts rather than just the inflatables. The balloon guy has booked for every event as well. The bands are being booked and food trucks will be booked, and there will be a frozen treat food truck at each event. Either Mim Pops or, what's the other one, Kevin? I can't think of the name of it. And so the other update in IH Park, there's another Eagle Scout project that could be going on to start putting new benches around the lake and repairing some of the picnic tables, either repair or replace picnic tables. So we're very grateful that the Scouts choose our parks to do their badge earning and provide the citizens some very nice things for our park. There is a new furniture purchase for the IH Park on the horizon. The money's already in the budget for that. That will be nice, and that
Rental furniture.
And as well as tables and chairs. If you've ever been there and used that for an event, the chairs and tables are both very dated and heavy and hard to move. And these tables and chairs will come on their own carts to make it easier for the staff to roll them out and get them set up more promptly than tying up their time at the clubhouse getting those things set up. They're also looking to update the Wi-Fi network. There are 2 separate Wi-Fi networks, one at the senior center and one at the IH clubhouse. And so we're being charged for both. So they're trying to combine to go under one umbrella to where just one Wi-Fi network is available for both facilities. Windward Slopes, there is going to be a USTA ribbon cutting ceremony to give appreciation for the grant money that it was funded that funded the new tennis court surfaces. And the playground mister has just basically been broken and fixed and broken and fixed, and it's just not really operational. So there are some talks going on with the company in Arlington about getting a new one of those installed there. In Oak Ridge Park, they are looking at putting in an inclusive playground, which will be really nice for handicapped individuals and any individuals that would like to come and play. It will be handicap accessible.
That'd be great.
Pending the $250,000 grant that has been applied for, so we might hear some movement on that soon. Arbor Day, the celebration will be April 26th from 3:30 till 5 here at City Hall, where citizens will be invited to come and get a tree and plant it to help beautify Lakeland. We're also going to talk with businesses to see if they would like to come and get some to help beautify their storefronts as well. The Senior Center has had wonderful attendance for March. They are planning a Stars and Stripes dinner the end of June to celebrate the 4th of July. And the lady that's going to sing, I'm sure you have heard this name before, Joyce Cobb. So they're very excited about that, and they want everyone to come out and celebrate with them. We got a very lengthy recreation report, all the recreation activities that we have available. One's most notable are the Safe Sitter program. They will teach basic CPR, how to get jobs, how to work with young children, and those classes, the registration closes on April the 19th, and it is for kids in grades 6 through 8. Lego Club again, cheerleading, recreational cheerleading, as well as a competitive cheerleading squad, flag football, tackle football, spring and youth and the adult tennis clinics, spring soccer, summer t-ball, and coach pitch baseball. They are really moving on with a wide variety of programs that should interest everyone. And one that interests me particularly is a coding camp is going to be offered from June 3rd through the 7th or June 10th through the 14th. And there will be a certified instructor. That is a program that is really big and up and coming in the elementary schools. We started it at our elementary school. It is setting students on the path for careers in technology, and so we are really fortunate to be able to offer that to the children of Lakeland. There was an athletic complex update. We had some good news and we had some bad news. So as we did in our meeting, I'll give the bad news first. There were wetlands identified, and it is a very large area, almost in the center of the area where the fields were going to be built during that first draw out that they did for this phase 1. And there's also a stream. And so those things cannot be disturbed unless there's a lot of water mitigation, which is very expensive to do. So we really, at this point, don't know what the impact is going to be, but there could be some rearranging of where we want those fields to be to try to, move around the existing water and maybe eventually do something with those wetlands it'll be nice aesthetics for the park. However, it is going to blow that first plan. It's going to have to be redrawn. The TDAC review, the time varies. They have just switched to a brand new computer system, and so the approval process is very long and arduous, and we have no idea how long it will take them to get us a review. But once we do get that whole review, the contract for the grant can be prepared, and then they can go to the design process. So hopefully we're not waiting too long. The good news is that with this wetland identified, we can still provide multi-purpose fields and parking. It's just going to have to be more strategically placed. And the archaeologist, report did show no findings. So there were no artifacts found, and so there will not be any delay in disturbing the land, because we will be able to go ahead and move forward since they have provided that information for us. And that was brought before the MPC, and the MPC was very supportive of the plan. So we're moving in that direction. We just don't know the timeliness of how it's all going to come together. Did I hit everything, Kevin? All the highlights? Oh, one more thing. Your assistant, Wendy, got to go to a health fair, and she came away feeling like she had reached many more kids than had been reached in the past, to allow them to know about all the programs that are being offered here in Lakeland. And she also came away with great ideas for healthier snacks for our snack bar at our IH Park concert series. So she felt like that was a very beneficial use of her time to go and engage with the people that were there, and I felt like she walked away with some great information and reaching children that have not known about these programs. It was at the Somerset Apartments. So there's a large amount of kids that lived in those apartments, so she felt great about walking away from that with some contacts. Good meeting.
Fantastic. Lots of great things happening in the Parks and Rec Department. That's a good sign. Any other things to report on? Meetings coming up. Yeah, MPC's next week, and lots happening there too. So good times. All right, that moves us down to the public discussion. I don't have anyone that has turned in any cards. We now have one card. We'll do that now? Okay. This moment, if you could hang on 1 second. I've been asked if we could, again, rearrange something. The discussion item number 9 on the second page. If it's okay with my fellow commissioners, Yehuda and Dexter have a commitment here this evening that they need to try to make, so we can let them go ahead and have their discussion time now, and then we'll move on into the public discussion.
Good evening, commissioners and citizens of Lakeland. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to add to Commissioner Dow's good news section. But this is all about the Lake District, good news. The Lake District, go to the next slide, is now 100% pre-leased or pre-committed, and maybe we'll come to a little more description a little later. With regard to our residential single-family homes, our first phase of the single-family homes is 60% through deposits. We will now move into what will be accomplished to date. And before we go into what you see on the screen, let's keep in mind one thing. I know there are a lot of people who have been saying, well, why are we giving the developers all that money? Under the good news section, folks, City of Lakeland has not given this developer any money. The developer keeps paying his bills, and the property tax, and the different fees to the city. No money has arrived in our mailbox, nor we expect any. That's including the TIF. So what have we done to date? We moved the large old sign that was sitting there as an eyesore for maybe decades. We demolished the former structures as we promised we will, and we did it ahead of schedule. We finished the complete acquisition of the Bell's property south of the mall. That was accomplished August 1st last year. We completed and approved the development plans as amended. We secured the grading and clearing permit, and as a matter of fact, under the 90% rule of the Lake District today, we're 90% cleared, and we burned about 50% of the material. The rest will be burned as soon as the wind dies down, hopefully before the rain comes. It's always tricky here between this and that. Our plan for the infrastructure for phase 1 has been completed and ready to be deployed. That means that as soon as we're done with the clearing, we are actually setting to go with the grading. We are, just so you understand, it's 40 acres. If you go to the site right now, and I invite all of you for a field trip, go right where the gas station is. That's an elevated point. Take a look. Everything that is in front of you, that 40 acres, it's all along the freeway. And by now, we just came from the site. Basically, all along Canada Road is essentially clear. If you haven't been there for the last week or so, you are at the right place, only it looks dramatically different. With regard to the tenants, phase 1, maybe we'll get into more discussion about that in a minute. We will describe that more details to you. All I can say that we're actually starting phase 2 leasing well ahead of our own schedule. And I would like to invite Dexter to describe in some details the financial aspect of the Lake District, the way it was and the way it is.
Several people have inquired about, well, what were the plans when they were originally approved? What are they today? Obviously, when this was originally approved in October of 2016, you wouldn't think that the world changes that fast, but the world changes in the retail market more than any other area. And so what we wanted to do was show you what was the plan then, now what has Amazon done to the retail market basically, and where do we stand today. So let's just take a look at the top line first. And in 2016, the total project value, if you can see that line, it was $294 million. Today, it's estimated to be $348 million. So it went up $54 million, or 18.4% is the total property value. And of course, one thing that's taken place since then, you had reappraisal. So you reduced your tax rate. And so what I did was to use the new valuations with what's called a cap rate to estimate what the values of the properties are, and then apply that to the current tax rate, which is $1.25. It was $1.44. So all the numbers that you're looking at in 2019 are based on today's tax rates. So that went up on the project values. It went up 18% for the property value alone. The square feet of retail originally was 580,000, and that included a good bit of big box retail. You know, that could have been a Target and some of the bigger stores that had maybe 100,000 square feet each. Today, that market is dwindled. That's why you're seeing malls and power centers and other centers like that really go through some trials and tribulations. And it's really more of a restaurant service, and then the smaller specialty retail is really what most people are building today. So today, that number of square feet is about 427,000, so it's a reduction of square footage by about 150,000 square feet. That translates into about a 7.3% reduction in the sales. So if you move over, that's the total project values, and then the next two columns show the difference for Lakeland and for Shelby County. So these are what the actual property taxes are estimated to be. So in 2016, total property taxes for Lakeland were about $1.3 million. Now it's about $1.5 million. So that went up 15.8%. The sales taxes were, because of the reduction of the square footage, declined. But if you look at the bottom line, the total taxes is about 3.8 million versus 3.7, so it went up 0.9%. So basically, it's a wash. It's about the same estimation that we had originally. If you look at Shelby County, theirs is a little bit different. Part of it is Shelby County's tax rate. There's a much higher percentage of what goes into debt service in Lakeland than it does in Shelby County. But what I wanted to do next was just to show you, okay, I see all that, but what do I get out of it? I mean, being Lakeland. So if we'll go to the next slide, Shane. This shows you a total. So the property taxes that go to debt service, and Lakeland's property tax is about 44% of it goes to debt service. And of course, most of that's for the schools. But 44% is 55 cents on a $1.25 tax rate. So the debt service in a TIF, the debt service comes off the top. In every TIF across the state, the debt service comes off, that goes to the city regardless. The next one is the city's 25% share, and that is, at this point, a rough estimate. And the reason why is because there are a lot of other things that come off. For example, the trustee collects 2% on every dollar that comes into property taxes, whether it's in Lakeland, Shelby County, they get 2% off the top. The Industrial Development Board also gets a small fee that they're able to use to support their activities, and that was part of the development agreement. So there's some of the fees that come off, but in short, Lakeland gets, and so does Shelby County, 25% of all the new taxes in addition to the debt service. So that ends up being a little bit over, almost $900,000. The sales tax is the big number, and without you looking at what the previous slide was, the total sales taxes are estimated in the $4.5 million range. Lakeland doesn't get all of that, even though it's spent here. So half of that sales tax comes off and goes to all of the schools. So Lakeland will get a piece of that as well, which I haven't included here, but that's a really small piece because your percentage of students versus all the students in Shelby County is pretty small. But that is a little bit more than what I've estimated here. The hotel motel tax, you have a 5% tax. And so we went through currently today, the occupancy rate for most hotels in Shelby County is about 65%. We use that for projected rates for those occupancies, and that's what you would generate about $460,000 a year in the hotel motel taxes. So if you add all that up, now this is at build out, so obviously this is going to be phasing in, but at build out, you'd have about $3.6 million that you don't have today. It's actually probably at least another 100,000 or more bigger than that because in the TIF, and you don't normally do anything with personal property taxes. So the theaters, the office buildings, the retail establishments, all the furniture, fixtures, all that stuff is personal property. You probably have another $50 million worth of personal property in here. And I just didn't include that at all. So first of all, it does depreciate, but that's another $50 million that you will be invested in the city. So basically, this is what the current analysis is, and I'd be glad to I've got spreadsheets that make your head spin, so I just tried to simplify it so you didn't have to wade through all the numbers. But anything that you would like for me to give in more detail or answer for you, I'd be glad to try to do that.
Go ahead.
Just appreciate to see the numbers here for people to anticipate what's coming down the pipe. I feel really good about where it's going, and momentum right now is going in our favor to have it completed. And I just look forward to our city being able to enjoy that, not just the taxes, but also the Lake District for our city and for the region to enjoy it. Thank you.
And you know, it is kind of interesting that if you look at the total investment, this is probably twice as big as any other project that's ever been taken on in Shelby County. Because I think that one, the largest one, was Crosstown Concourse, and that was 175 to maybe 200 million. So, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Stole most of my thunder, but
Sorry.
I just want to, I think the big question is when will we see a timeline to see things really happening? That's the big question I get from the folks out there.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are great, and they're, predictions, not promises, I understand that. But, you need to, people want to see something happening as far as coming out of the ground and producing revenue. And any reassurances you can give the people out there, they would be a lot happy about that. So that's all, but presentation.
I think that Maggie and Yehuda are in a better position to talk about the construction schedule, because what you're interested in seeing is the vertical.
Results, yeah, just results
The
in
building
the
on the
our
ground.
city. Right. As I mentioned a while ago, property taxes is putting the bill right now. And we've got a lot of big things to do here, and we need you. I get it, we need you. Thanks.
Good evening, thank you. Valid question, and we're at a wonderful point in this project to be able to answer that question for you. What the lenders need, what we need, what you need was executed leases. And we have, out of 100% of pre-leasing, 90% are fully executed leases. In addition to that, we have more prospects than we can actually place in phase one at this time. So we actually are juggling the balance, that 10% of who's going to go where based on their commitment on what's called a letter of intent. And a letter of intent is basically a letter that describes the terms under which we are prepared as a landlord to bring them into the project and under which they are able to accept as a tenant. And we want to make sure that we have the perfect co-tenancy that really makes the project a holistic project that serves the community. So as a result of having more prospects than we can actually place in phase one, we're actually starting leasing on the leasing plan for phase two, which we've just completed with LRK. And what I mean by the leasing plan is when we actually kind of drill down into what the base sizes are, how the tenants can be placed within the Main Street part of the project. And that goes along with the residential development, which is 60% committed for what we have released in the first part of the phase two of the residential portion. The demand on the residential continues to be exceptionally high, and they too are waiting for this same construction schedule. So for the phase one, what we have committed to those tenants and what they need from us is they have to be open. We have to deliver space to them by September, October of 2020. They need to be open by the holidays. So this is our commitment, providing, we don't have a terribly wet winter next year and we should be enclosed by then, so going vertical. Once you're vertical, you're pretty safe to continue on with progress. The wet season, even though we know we're going to get a little more rain right now, we're starting grading in the next week or so, but the clearing and burning is done. So we have a lot of momentum right now. But it's really imperative in the retail industry that we are able to deliver that space to those tenants so that they can be open for the holidays. So again, the commitment from us is that we want to deliver a space. That means there's a building shell there and they can begin their build-out process September, October of 2020, and they are open for between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Phase two will probably be, say, 12 months after that. We'll be working some of the grading simultaneously. Any other questions regarding that? I do have an announcement to make. We are having an event coming up here very shortly, May the 2nd, which is a Thursday, from 3 to 6 p.m., and we're going to have it right here at City Hall. One of the tenants that we have secured, as you all know, is Memphis Barbecue Company, and they are just a phenomenal barbecue company out in South Haven right now. They have a big store, do a lot of catering. Melissa Cookston is very involved in TV network. She's written 2 cookbooks. She's a star in the barbecue world, and we are just thrilled to have them. And they are very excited to become a part of the Lakeland community with us. So they are co-marketing with us and donating 400 family dinners for 4, and we're going to create a drive-through here. So it's dinner on us to the moms and dads. You don't have to feed your kids that night. Come and pick up between 3:30 and 6 o'clock your dinner pack for 4, and we'll have a suggested donation that goes to the Lakeland City School Foundation. Am I saying this correctly? The Lakeland
Education
Thank you. The Lakeland Education Foundation. I've got to get this really straight because we're going to post this on Facebook and put out a press release, and we hope that we feed a whole lot of families in Lakeland along with our partner, Memphis Barbecue Company. Thank you.
So, Commissioner Gonzalez, everybody wants to know when. Well, Easter is around the corner, and all the kids wants to know when the eggs are coming. Well, these are our golden eggs for the city of Lakeland in perpetuity. It takes a while to build the biggest project in Shelby County. Dexter just explained, twice as big as the concourse in Crosstown, and it's have taken them a few years too. Only they did not go through an approval process, and they did not fight the 2008 recession and everything else in the process. Everybody's anxious. The number one anxious group is right there behind me, Dexter and Maggie, myself included. So we really appreciate the fact that everybody is excited. I would like to take the positive spin of all those questions of when and our frustration. It's like all of us, we would like to have our toys already. And why not? We deserve them. So, I'd like to make sure that, and here is, by the way, our future Lake District holiday card. We're ready for the full, spectacular, beautiful Lakeland when it's completed for the Lake District. That's what it's going to look like. And everybody will get those cards, and you can send them to your friends too, because I'm sure they would like to visit this place when we're ready. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to answer more questions from anybody, certainly from you commissioners, but in short, I'd just like to finish with this image in mind. This is what we're working towards.
I'll just say thank you very much. Thank you for your perseverance on this project. And the only question that I had was around when you guys will apply for the liquor permit and the liquor license and everything, as far as the new large liquor store. I'm just curious
Sure.
about what that time
Well,
looks like.
the problem is, unfortunately, and unless somebody can educate something, but they're anxious to put it any day. There is a state moratorium that expires in 2021. They cannot physically be legally open under the state of Tennessee by, I believe, May or June of 2021.
July 1.
Even further. Unless you guys have some magic wand underneath the counter there, would like to use it. We tried. We thought there may be some kind of a legal loophole. I don't think there is. Maybe the city attorney can figure something out. They're ready anytime. If the place is ready and they cannot physically use it for the intended purposes, we will donate a space for Boys and Girl Scouts to do holiday wrapping and other community events. If they need a good space, they can do it right there. Okay? Thank you so much. Appreciate your time and your patience. And thank you for the community, including those who would like to encourage us to do it faster, but we can't. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. I know we look at the financials and we all want it out of the ground and all, but I have to say this will truly be the beacon for Lakeland. So we are truly behind you 100%. We want this as soon as possible. Obviously, everybody does. But this will truly be you know, our city's big beacon right there on the interstate and offering everything it's gonna offer, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mayor, appreciate the kind words. We are busy from one meeting to the other. Right before this meeting, we came out of a 3-hour work session with our supermarket suppliers. We're already going into exactly how we're going to supply it, how we're going to merchandise it, what kind of product. Everything is geared into making our stock market, which is our name, completely unique of all markets in the, anywhere near here, maybe 600 miles away even. Unique market, unique merchandising. We are going to be not a place you go just to eat. You're going to be, everything will look and taste better if you bought it in the stock market because the way the Lake District looks. That's our intent. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have just one appearance card, and it is Mr. Melton.
Live Melton, 9584 Pine Point Drive. My comment is a positive one tonight. Lived here 31 years. Seems like we've gotten back to the basics. We're using a lot of the Boy Scouts, and they're improving our parks. There was a time when we did not pay taxes here, and we relied on a lot of volunteer work. The tulips that have been planted throughout the city. I cannot tell you how many people, even friends of mine that have come for a visit that do not live here, have seen them and were impressed and said it appears like someone cares about your city now. I'm hoping that, I don't know if that was Keep Lakeland Beautiful that did that or if that was the city manager, but I would just like to commend whoever did it and encourage everyone to do their part in keeping the trash picked up, and the more civic pride that we show, the more people want to live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Melton. Martin. Oh, yes, and that was Martin Perez of Public Works. He is a genius when it comes to having a green thumb. I wish I had half the green thumb he does. But I know he takes pride in his work, and I know his staff love to work for him. So phenomenal job, Shane, if you would let him know that it's recognized for sure. All right. Let's move on down. We moved a lot of stuff last week at the work session to the consent agenda, so we can actually get through this agenda relatively quickly. I do have a statement that I'm going to make, but I'm going to hold that to the announcements at the end. But let's go ahead. Any sewage business, we didn't have any at the work session, so there's nothing for that. Madam Clerk, if you would please just read the consent agenda.
Item 1, approval of meeting minutes from previous meetings. Regular meeting minutes, March 5th, 2019. B, special meeting minutes, March 26th, 2019. Item number 2, resolution approving a development contract for Wednesday Farm Plan Development Lot 8, rescinding resolution 2019/03-02. Item number 3, resolution approving a contract with Herbie System, Inc. for chemical vegetation control services. Item number 4, resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with NewCo LLC for the fiscal year 2019 IH Clubhouse roof replacement. Item number 5, resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a proclamation naming April 26, 2019 as the City of Lakeland's Arbor Day 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there anyone that wants to remove anything out of the consent agenda? Hearing none and having a motion to second, any discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, and if we can move on to the regular agenda, we've already taken care of resolution 1. Madam Clerk, if you would read item number 2.
Approval of meeting minutes from previous meeting. A, special meeting minutes, March 20, 2019.
bring this to the floor. Have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll move on to the discussion, and on this one, I believe, our city attorney has a comment about those particular minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the commission. This deals with our our March 20th special meeting where the Board of Commissioners voted to amend Resolution 19-02-01 to clarify and provide specific parameters to PFM on the capital outlay note assumptions. Included in, and the Board of Commissioners approved 8 amendments that are attached to your minutes. Amendment number 5, while it may not have been the intent, out of a matter of clarification, deals with, number 5 deals with whether or not PFM should assume that reserves are used or needed for the new Canada Road project as they do their due diligence for the capital outlay note. So the first clause of that clearly fits under what the call of that meeting was. There was some concern as to the remainder of number 5 that stated that the BOC directs the staff to withdraw our city application for funding and anticipates applying for the next round of applications, which is believed to be 2023. The BOC will decide on funding options at that time, assuming the application is approved. There is a very strong argument that while it may not have been the intent, that the plain language of that would be to take action that was not in the call of a special meeting, both under Robert's Rules of Order and under the Tennessee Open Meetings Act. For a special called meeting, the only actions can be taken are those in the call. So while it may not have been the intent, as out of an abundance of caution, it would be my recommendation that in approving amendments, we make clear that the totality of amendment number 5 reads, assume no reserves are used or needed at this time for the new Canada Road project, period.
Do I hear a motion that we strike everything past that first sentence that our city attorney has just read?
To amend the minutes to reflect that.
To amend the minutes to reflect that, yes.
May I have the floor, please?
Sure.
I'm of the opinion that since we didn't see this until the meeting, the public didn't see this until the meeting, I believe that the spirit of the special meeting requirement was violated. So I think that the meeting we just strike the meeting, we need to do it again. The public didn't see this, and we didn't see this until that evening. So I don't understand why I know we're concerned about number 5, but I think the whole thing needs to go away and be done. It's a special meeting, it's not noted on the agenda. None of these items are on there. It just says we're going to talk about due diligence.
Just a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Can you describe what meeting minutes are?
Meeting minutes are the approval and reflection generally of what the Board of Commissioners does at a meeting. The meetings or the minutes memorialize what had happened.
Did the questions that come up happen during the meeting?
Which questions?
Whatever questions you've received afterwards that have made you draw attention to item 5, did any of them come up during the meeting?
No.
Do you think this is the appropriate way of handling it to reflect, to change history? Or do you think it would be more appropriate to bring the item back up and amend it appropriately?
I would prefer it to be brought back up and amended.
Okay, I'm perfectly fine with that. I just wanted to.
Yeah, no,
I don't think
I
it's the
think,
appropriate way.
I think the cleanest, clearest way would be to bring the item back up and amend it.
But I guess my point is that we don't really have the ability to go back and change the minutes of the last meeting. We have the ability to determine how we want to proceed going forward. And I'm perfectly fine bringing the item back up for a vote or an amendment or whatever it means. I just don't think that changing the meeting minutes, I think that's a very bad precedent.
That's certainly within the purview of the commission.
To change history, it's our ability to change.
To amend the minutes as they see fit, or to not, or to bring the matter back up for an amendment and a vote.
I'll yield to the body.
All right, so currently, our attorney is recommending that we approve the minutes as written with the amendment of striking that particular statement that you read.
Yes, and to Vice Mayor Roman's point, the best of all possible worlds, I think, would be to amend the amendments to comply with the call that was made for the special call meeting. So to strike the last two clause, well, the last clause and the last sentence of amendment number 5.
I'll entertain a motion if someone wants to proceed down that path.
Just as a point of information, we have to handle the business that's in front of us first, which is the meeting minutes. So in order to do that, we would have to approve or disapprove the meeting minutes and then add the other item to the agenda item tonight or at another time.
Mr. Attorney, since those things were actually discussed within the meeting, they are recorded as happening within that meeting, so they are justly so in the minutes. So by approving the minutes, we are not saying that these things should not have been discussed in the meeting and that they need to be brought up again. In approving the minutes, we are just saying that these things occurred during that meeting. So then we can make a motion to re-entertain item 5 as another motion that would be separate, because all these things were discussed during the meeting.
I think what you just said would be appropriate, yes.
That's these, we talked about everything, it was all read into the record. So by approving these minutes, we are not making any decision to move forward. This was just an item to clarify specific things that PFM needed to know in the directions in performing their due diligence for that document, that capital outlay note. So if we then bring forward a motion to put either on the next agenda, or you can't add to the agenda during a meeting, that we approve the minutes because they were written as these items were discussed, and then bring up a motion for the next meeting to discuss item number 5 specifically.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think instead of rewriting the record, just say
Yes, you
that's what
can't
happened, but then we can go back and put it on another agenda.
Yeah, you
with
can't
the-
rewrite.
With the change of item 5.
You can't
Change.
rewrite the minutes, they actually occurred.
I would move we just want to approve the amendments and do it over again, but, you know, these items were not on the agenda. And the public did not see this before that meeting. We didn't see it before the meeting. So I think that's just, again, that's, it may have been an honest mistake, but it happened, and I think we need to go back and do it right.
I would just recommend that we, let's say we approve the minutes, and then we just bring it back on another agenda and go through that again with the change we're talking about with item number 5. Just do it over.
I don't
They
think-
actually happened.
I realize that it actually happened, but I don't believe we can legally approve the minutes without opening ourselves up to more controversy that this city doesn't need. I would recommend that we do not approve the minutes, and we, now that we know what this information is, we put together either a special meeting or we come back next month and we move forward with what we have as defined so that the citizens actually know, because I don't believe legally by the Open Meetings Act and with Robert's rules that particular thing there, if we approve that, we might be doing something that we would regret, and I don't want to put the city through that. So that's my recommendation. We're in the discussion phase right now. Anybody else has any other suggestions? I believe that's the safest way, regardless of how this is done, to get it done and do it right, so that we don't have any complications going forward.
Is that your opinion?
My opinion is that we need to do something to excise the part of the amendments that seem to have directed the staff to take actions on Canada Road.
And you believe the item that you first suggested of striking it does that, and it does it appropriately?
I do.
Okay. I brought up the questions not to change your mind, but to make sure you were 100% confident with your recommendation. So if that is the case, then I'm comfortable moving forward with this original recommendation.
So, motion's on the floor, we have a second, and through the discussion, it was determined that the legal correct thing to do would be to strike the sentence after the first phrase in item 5, and then approve the minutes as amended.
I believe that would serve to amend the resolution. And so, again, there are a couple of ways I think you could do it. I think you could do it that way. I think you could probably also, there are a dozen ways you could do it. But I think that works. I think that it makes it clear that it was not the intent of the body to direct the staff to take any action as to the Canada Road project, because the notice that was given to the public was that this body would be discussing the notice of intent to proceed with due diligence on the capital outlay note of $38 million, which is what these amendments, except for those clauses in Amendment 5, did.
Okay, so based on your recommendation, if we go that route, do I hear a motion that we amend the minutes per the city attorney, and then we'll proceed and approve the minutes after they're amended?
Motion to amend the minutes, striking the second section of item 5.
So I have a second? Second. Any further discussion on the amendment? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for the amendment of the March 20 minutes?
Vice Mayor Roman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dow,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
No.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Mayor Cunningham,
No.
Commissioner West, 2 noes.
The amendment to the minutes carries, and now we need to proceed with approving the minutes as amended. Madam Recorder, if you would please call the roll on the amended minutes, and we'll move on.
Vice Mayor Roman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dow,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
No.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Mayor Cunningham,
No. Motion carries 3-2. All right. Madam Recorder, if you would read regular agenda item 3.
ordinance, first reading, amending the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget, passed by ordinance 18-265, amended by ordinance 18-267, and ordinance 19-269.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, this ordinance we discussed a little last week at the work session. Essentially, all we're doing is removing the budget impact of the fire department, which the Board of Commissioners voted several weeks ago to remove from consideration from this budget year, So that's approximately $1.49 million that is being taken out of this budget. 300,000 or approximately 400,000 of that would be related to expenditures related to the fire department, and then $1 million roughly of that was related to capital related to the fire department. That whole amount is being removed from the budget, so it will have a positive impact to the fund balance. There is another section of the amendment, as I stated before, soccer is a self-sustaining sport, and so they incurred more activity than they originally budgeted, which is a positive. But of course, those activities incurred necessary expenses, so we are amending the budget to reflect the increase in revenues and the commensurate increase in expenditures related to the soccer activity as well. And then the third part of the ordinance is related to a grant that's received by the Parks Department from the United States Tennis Association, and that grant was related to resurfacing of the tennis courts that was done, I believe, last year. So the budget is also being amended just to account for that $10,000 grant. And those last two items that I mentioned are going specifically to the park function. Do you guys have any questions?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Appreciate it at the work session and tonight. Do I hear a motion to bring this to the floor?
Bring it.
Have a second? Okay.
I brought it to the floor.
I'll second. Okay, that works. I think y'all said it at the same time, but that's okay. Any further discussion on this item?
I have one more, please.
Sure.
Just one thing, Kevin, you know, I've been asking for all these revenue producing sports, you know, expenses, revenue, and I need to get that from you, so I, you know, just, we know where we're going on this stuff.
I believe, Kyle, did we not send that out?
Yes, we received a copy of the budget.
Okay.
The budget, right, but, you know, for each sport.
So you just need a breakdown from there?
I want to see a breakdown, because you've got money coming in for expenses, and it's going out for, you know, money for expenses. I need to know, we need to know, I need to see where, I gotta see where it's going, okay?
Okay.
If you've got X numbers of dollars coming in for soccer, then after you do everything you gotta do, how much tax money is we just need accountability.
There's no tax dollars going to any of our sport facilities.
Well, but you've got a big budget there, I just need to see.
If the sports programming,
this is-
there's no tax dollars going to. Now, we do for IH and other activities, we do have tax dollars to help fund maintenance and repairs. And I'm happy to get you that breakdown. But just to clarify, there is 0 tax dollars going to the sport program.
But you are, okay, that's what I need to see, because you're buying equipment and stuff. And so if you're telling me all that is offset by your fees and stuff, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because you just can't look at the, you know, the budget we have now that says, you know, it's a wash, or you're making money, or whatever, okay?
That's fine. I was under the assumption it was said, but I'll make sure we get that to you guys in a more detailed. Do you want just soccer, or do you want
No,
all?
all, if you've got fees coming in, cheerleading, anything, the fees you have coming in, then just show us. I'm the one that's really, I'd like to see it. And, just, you know, nothing, I don't expect anything wrong, I just want to know that, you know, we're accounting for everything properly.
Okay.
That's all I'm asking.
No problem.
Any further discussion on the first reading of this ordinance? Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll for item 3.
Vice Mayor Roman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dow,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Mayor Cunningham,
Yes.
5 yes, all in favor.
All right, fantastic. Motion carries unanimously. If you would please read item 4.
Ordinance, first reading, amending the City of Lakeland wireless transmission facility ordinance, Article 3, Section 14 of the Land Development Regulations.
All right, do I have well, let's hear from Forrest first, and we'll bring it to the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. We discussed the next, I guess, 3 ordinance amendments in our work session last week, so I'll try and summarize and be brief. The first item that we're looking at is the amendment to our wireless transmission facility ordinance. And really, this is to incorporate proposed, or the deployment of small cell sites that will be eventually for the transmission of 5G technology. It really is in keeping with the state legislation known as Public Charter Act 219 for the Competitive Wireless Broadband Investment Deployment and Safety Act of 2018. And our ordinance is guided after that, all the regulations that were specified by the state. We've worked with other municipalities who have enacted this same legislation, as well as our city attorney, to craft this. And it does give us a little bit of guidance in terms of regulating the heights, the pole types, co-locations, the type of applications that we have, and the fees that we're going to be requiring for these small cell sites. Happy to answer any questions.
Do I have a motion to bring this to the floor?
So moved. Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. In the discussion phase, anybody have any questions over and above what we were presented with during the work session last week? Pretty cut and dry, so being no further discussion, if you would please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Romney,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Mayor Cunningham.
Yes.
5 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. Forrest, while you have the floor, if you would, Madam Recorder, please read item 5.
Ordinance, first reading. Amending the City of Lakeland Plan Development Ordinance, Article 1, Section 4, T of the Lakeland Development Regulation.
Thanks again. This is an amendment to, as Madam Recorder stated, our plan development ordinance. Some of the board, or all the board, may be aware that we're looking at our development regulations. We have some conflicts, we have some issues with some of those regulations, and so we hope to be working with developers, design professionals, landowners throughout the city in the next 6 months to a year, and revising those land development regulations. This is sort of a preface to that, if you will. It amends the plan development ordinance in a number of ways, and just to summarize those, the board has previously approved the fact that a plan development does not have to have a special permit prior to submitting or applying for approval. That is not reflected in our ordinance. The ordinance was just never modified to revise that. A couple of the other items that the Planning Commission has looked at and approved include reducing the area of a plan development from 15 acres to 3 acres. In other words, you would have to have a minimum of 3 acres instead of 15 acres to apply for a plan development. That's consistent with both what Germantown and Collierville are doing. Actually, Collierville doesn't have any restrictions on size for residential plan development, but the other issue we're amending is to allow the time extension for plan developments extended from 1 year to the current practice that we utilize is 3 years, and then a number of smaller administrative amendments that I'll have to go over with the left.
Have it on the floor.
We do not, I'll make the motion later.
Second.
All right, motion second. Any further discussion?
Yes. George, did you say that the minimum size was changed from 3 to 15, or the other way around?
Yes, the other way around.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, went from 15 to 3, and that did go through the PC and everything as well, so, as well as the work session. So, Madam Recorder, being no further discussion, if you would, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Romney,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Mayor Cunningham.
Yes.
5 in favor, 0 against.
All right, that motion, or that ordinance carries all 5 votes. Madam Recorder, if you would read ordinance 6 for us, please.
Ordinance, first reading, amending Lakeland's code to set reasonable court costs for the Lakeland Municipal Court.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Forrest, would you like to enlighten us?
Sure, real briefly, we currently charge $25 for court costs, and we'd like to raise that to $100, and that's in keeping with other municipalities in Shelby County.
All right, no further discussion. We'll move forward. Madam Recorder, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Romney,
Yes.
Commissioner Dow?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Mayor Cunningham?
Yes.
5 in favor, 0 against.
All right, that ordinance carries unanimously. And if you would please read ordinance 7.
Ordinance, first reading, an ordinance of the city of Lakeland, amending ordinance 16-236, and ordinance amending title 1-102 of the Lakeland City Code concerning the Board of Commissioners agenda format.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Shane, would you like to give a few details? We have some citizens here tonight we didn't have at the work session, so.
Yeah, thank you. During our work session, I kind of brought up opportunities to kind of maybe do some housekeeping on the agenda. If there was anything that the board wanted to rearrange on the agenda from a location, clean up language that might have been used that needs to be cleaned up. And I brought up the public discussion title and asked about changing that to public comment. And I have gotten some feedback, and I think I just want to clarify my comments. You know, I've worked in local government for 26 years. I certainly understand engaging with the public and the importance that that has on an elected body, and I'm certainly not looking to limit that per se. But when I mentioned this, my only intent simply was to clean that language up from discussion to comment. This really is an opportunity. Our regular meetings are for you all as our elected officials to do business, and obviously engaging with the public is part of that business, and having that feedback is very important. But it's really not the time, unless we're doing a town hall type discussion, it's really not the time for a back and forth discussion. That's my opinion. So certainly we have a lot of things on our plate and a lot bigger issues to deal with. If it's not the desire of the board to make any corrections, you know, that's completely fine. I just brought it up as a staff. We've talked about it, and if there's a desire of the board to make that simple change, so be it. If not, then we will continue as is.
All right, thank you, Shane. Any further discussion?
Just a point of clarification, which I could, just, this is really in direct relation to the agenda format. I want to draw key attention to the word format. This is in no way defines how public comment or discussion takes place. Doesn't mention time limits, doesn't do anything. Hopefully at a later meeting, we can discuss decorum or special rules or how we want to conduct our meetings. But this is really just a reminder that, you know, of the business of the day. So I just want to draw attention that it's really just a wording change. It's not, there's no rules that come with it. So if that makes sense.
All right, any other discussion?
Just a quick comment. If that's the case, I would think we just delay this until we decide, you know, talk about changes we want to make it to town. It's just a word, and it's not, and I agree, it's not going to change how we do business, how we talk to the public. But a town our size, I just think it's essential that public input at our meetings is important. Most of the time, we don't engage the public. They make their comments, but sometimes we get involved. I was on that side of the room many times, and I did get engaged with a former commissioner about the tax rate, and had a little debate here in the hall, but I got it clarified because he was wrong. I'm just concerned that a city of 50,000 people, the more public input we have, the better off we are. And that's my only comment about it. It's, like I said, it's not a big deal, but, you know, I just, you know, the word, that's my concern.
I'll follow up that with, we've got a lot of other things that are more important than changing a word on our and our format of how we do our meetings, we can look at that at a later time. I don't believe this is necessarily the time to do that. Like we say, it's not going to change the ability for the public to speak and engage in conversation, as long as it's proactive conversation. And so I don't believe we need to be addressing this at the time, but if there's no further discussion, I will let the Madam Recorder call the roll on this one.
Vice Mayor Rome,
Yes.
Commissioner Dow,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
No.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Mayor Cunningham,
No.
3 yes, 2 no's.
All right, that motion carries 3-2. And Madam Recorder, if you would please read resolution number 8.
Resolution, amending resolution 2016/05-44, authorizing the installation of asphalt concrete surface courts in the preserve subdivision.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion and a dual second. The floor is open for discussion. Emily?
So this was brought up for a discussion item by Vice Mayor Roman to amend the resolution. It was voted on back in 2016, which basically the board directed staff to pave the preserve at what time it was appropriate. And so all this does is clarify it a little bit more, so it sets a cap of $300,000. I think that's probably more than enough to take care of the surface, plus some patching. And it also puts a stipulation that it could be committed from the general fund balance. So those were two amendments that Vice Mayor Roman had requested that we put into that ordinance to just further define where that money would come from and the amount.
All right. Thank you, Emily. Any discussion? You may have the floor.
And my only concern, that we talked the other day, it's $30,000 is a lot of money. I would like to have a motion that we delay this for 30 days, just to give you the opportunity and the city staff to look back in the records and see exactly what happened. I know this won't happen again because the city's changed since then. But if there's any possible way to go back and find out if there's that bond's out there somewhere floating around, something's going. Is there any possible way to recover some of this money before we commit to the $300,000? Probably not, but I just think it might be better that we look at it one last time.
Back in 2016, we researched it, and there's a resolution that shows that the final security was released. So and we also, the city attorney at the time looked, the developer, the LLC that was formed, and it's dissolved. So we pretty much exhausted all efforts to try to have any of that security money still out there, and it's just not. We did a pretty extensive search before we even brought this before the board. So it's already, the research has already been done, and it's just not there.
It's just amazing that someone could make that big mistake in the past.
Well, it wasn't a mistake. So our procedure in the past, so before we went kind of through the recession, the city did not collect security for private improvements. We collected it for public improvements because, that was where our interest was, right? And so this probably would not have happened had the surface or the base course been down for so many years because there were no homes being built in there. Typically, when home building is going on pretty actively, the developer is still involved, for a number of years. The homes are being built, they put the service down, they're done. So this sat for a number of years, probably 6 to 8 years. And then in that time, the developer went under, and it was just sort of a perfect storm. So when the new land development regs were adopted, back in, I think that was the end of 13, they have a very specific formula for public and private improvements collecting that security. So we currently collect, just on the asphalt end of it, we collect 30% of the construction cost for the base, and 100% for the surface, in addition to all the other infrastructure that goes in, and 100% for private improvements. So, you know, it's a shame that was not our policy then, and I think a lot of municipalities kind of got caught in that. It wasn't something that was foreseen because it hadn't happened before. But we have already put in place policies that protect us from this happening in the future.
I've seen them.
Yeah, and private roads are not a common item in development anyway, because they're expensive for the HOAs to maintain in the future.
Right.
So they're not really encouraged anyway. So I think, you know, I feel pretty comfortable in our policies now that we're definitely making sure that this doesn't happen again. We also, in our development contract, it's been revised so that it's not just a percentage build out, it's got a 4-year cap also. So even if no homes have been built in there, within that 4 years, the developer has to put the surface down. So that's another catch to prevent something like this happening again.
Of all the confidence in the world, what we're doing now, I was just curious because the
Yeah.
folks who bought those homes technically, you know, technically paid for that final, you know, although it's a private road, the developer, you know, they paid for that. I don't have a problem paying for the road to fix it, to bring it up. I'm just curious that, you know, it's just a lot of money. And,
Yeah.
like I said, last week, we were just at the will, and all those folks are gone, but it's just, it's sad that it happened that way.
Yeah, it's the way the policies were in place, you know, at that time, that we just did not collect for private improvements. We collected for public, which would be our interest. So it was kind of short-sighted, I would say.
Are there any other developments that are in that situation?
No. So Long Landing is the only other development that that is in a similar type situation. So it's a private road. They're almost to the point of needing a surface. We just recently went back and looked at the security that's in place, and it still is enough to do that final surface. All the other developments are relatively new, and so that's the next one in line, and we are fine on that development.
Appreciate your work.
Thanks.
Any further discussion on this item? All right, Madam Recorder, if you would, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Roman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dow,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Mayor Cunningham,
Yes.
5 yes, 0 opposed.
All right. That completes the resolutions. We had the discussion with the Lake District and move that forward. We're now on the section for announcements. Anyone have an announcement? You have the floor.
Just for 5 seconds. A lot of you know that my diversion from reality is model trains. I'd like to invite everybody to bring their kids out to the Memphis Model Railroad Club on April the 27th. We'll have an open house from 11 to 5, I believe. Contact me for the location. It's in a private business, so I hesitate to announce the name of the business, but I would be glad to let you know where it's at and what time to be there, bring the kids. There are model railroad layouts in every gauge, and every time we have this open house, the kids love it. Our particular layout, we let the kids actually operate the train, and it's very fascinating. There's a fabulous HO layout there. There's an N-scale layout, but the guys actually run the thing with dispatchers, headsets, and they just don't run trains. They play real railroad. But everyone's invited. Please contact me, and I will make sure you know where it's at, and come out there and see some trains. We have snacks and that kind of stuff too. So let me know.
Yes. Any other announcements before I make the statement that I promised this last week? Okay, I'll proceed. I just want everyone to know that I made an oath to every citizen in this city when I was sworn into this office. And this gives me no joy or no pleasure to have to read this statement. I will read this statement and I will not have a comment after it. I will ask for adjournment. I want to make an announcement on the record regarding ethics, transparency, and accountability. Having completed the MTAS class for newly elected officials, specifically referencing the ethics training, I want everyone to understand that an elected official or employee of any government entity, we are bound by the same ethics laws. This training teaches that anyone in municipal government, whether they are an employee or an elected official, are required to report to the proper authorities anything that they find or even suspect that has been done or is being done of a questionable or unethical nature. That being said, over the past 3 months, I have been doing extensive research into Lakeland's records, and I have found numerous questionable financial anomalies. And I'm not talking 1 or 2, I'm talking double digits. By law, I am obligated to report these to the proper authorities. This has been done at the state level, and I'm scheduled to meet with the local authorities. Based on these anomalies, I am asking for a full forensic audit of all Lakeland's departments and entities, including the school board. Based on my findings, the chips will fall where they may. But from this point forward, my administration will start with a clean slate, and I will not be held accountable for anything that was done prior to me taking office. I cannot legally nor will I willfully ignore the information that I have uncovered, and I fully intend to cooperate fully with the authorities in these matters. I believe the citizens of this city deserve accountability from their elected officials and every employee of this city. Also, based on the State Comptroller's Office's recommendation, I'm going to be asking our attorney, Mike Marshall, to draft a city code of ethics letter that explains in detail ethical expectations. And I will be asking every elected official and employee to sign a copy of this letter stating that they understand state laws that pertain to ethics, accountability, and reporting of questionable activities. At this time, I have no further comments on this statement, and I will not be able to disclose any additional details. Respectfully submitted, Mike Cunningham, Mayor, Lakeland, Tennessee. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Thank you.